What's going on, everybody? Coach Hofmann here, Kyle Hofmann, University of West Florida. I hope everyone's doing well, with everything going on. Great time for us, though, as coaches to kind of get together and network and communicate and, bounce ideas off each other. So today I'm going to be talking about some of our fire zone concepts out of our 3-4 defense. I'll spend most of the time talking about the back end of it, playing the fire zone behind the 5-man pressure. Not going through like too much of the exotic blitzes that we do out of it, but more in the back end and how we play it. A little bit about me. There's my name, Kyle Hofmann. I'm a defensive assistant here at the University of West Florida. Here's my contact information if you want to get a hold of me. There's my email address, hoff15132@gmail.com. And then there's my Twitter. It's @Kyle_Hofmann_. Feel free to reach out, at any point. When I finish this, I'll probably go over that again. But if you don't make it to the end of the video, get that information down now. If you have any questions about our fire zones and how we do them, or any other questions about, something else in particular that you want to reach out about, feel free. The last month or so, I've loved the opportunity to be connecting with coaches and talk ball. So always love talking ball. So feel free, please, to reach out to me. But like I said, today we'll be talking about specifically the back end of a fire zone. Little quick information about me. I started 18-year-old assistant varsity defensive backs coach out in Arizona at Mountain Ridge High School. We made a nice run there for 6 years as a varsity assistant coach and then a head freshman coach. From there, I went to Peoria Centennial High School. My first 2 years there, we won the state championship in 2007, 2008, and that was actually the third in a row for the school. For the 6 years I was there, I was the defensive backs coach and special teams coordinator. Like I said, we had a great run, great record. It was a great opportunity for me to be under a lot of good coaches and as a young coach, learned a lot of things from Coach Taylor and all the guys over there. From there, I was blessed to get a head varsity football coach job out in Napa, California, Vintage High School. Spent 3 years there as a head coach. Really fought for every win over there. And in my second year there, we made it to the playoffs, and it was the first time the school had been to the playoffs in 8 years. So that was a great accomplishment. Took about a year off or so, and then came back in 2018 as the defensive coordinator and special teams coordinator and coached the defensive backs at Phoenix College in 2018. Another great opportunity, first experience at the college level, the community college, junior college level. Learned a lot. I was appreciative for Coach Mejia bringing me on. Once they decided to shut down all those JUCOs, my family stays out here in Pensacola. I'd heard great things about the University of West Florida and Coach Shinnick and the staff. So about 15 months ago, I packed my car, drove to West Florida, and basically walked on as a coach. And then in the past year, I was the assistant defensive line coach, worked a lot with the special teams and did some defensive quality control stuff as well. And then right now I'm recruiting the state of Georgia. I do some JUCO recruiting, and then I recruit the transfer portal. And then you'll see there, last year we were blessed to be the national champions and had a 13-2 overall record, and looking to do it again in 2020. So like I said, today we're talking about fire zones. I think it's important for us to ask the questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So we'll start with the what. What is a fire zone? So essentially a fire zone is a 5-man pressure, and then behind it running the 3 under and 3 deep coverage. And the premise of it is that you're bringing pressure to disrupt the offense in both the run and the pass game, while being a little more conservative and, maybe quote unquote safe behind it and not playing a man cover 1 or cover 0 behind it. Okay, that's the premise of what a fire zone is. I think you need to ask the question, why would you choose to run a fire zone behind it? Why would you want to run a 3 under 3 deep behind a 5-man pressure when there are other alternative coverages you could run? Obviously, bringing 5, that leaves you 6 guys to cover. And I think everyone knows you could run, like a man free behind it or a cover 0. So some of the reasons, why we might choose to run a fire zone is the first one, the beauty of installing fire zones, that the rules can remain fairly simple. There's simple rules behind it in terms of the zone concepts. We get a 5-man pressure, and like I said, it's fairly safe or conservative against the run and the pass, and you still got your 3 deep. Another reason, you might not want to play man behind your 5-man pressure is you don't have the athletes to match up. You don't have, you can't run the cat defense where you tell your cats to cover their cat. So if you got lesser athletes, it's a great alternative to being able to bring a 5-man pressure and still feel good about it. Like I said, you don't got to sell out and play cover 0 behind your blitz. Another important thing is here, you don't have to spend the time in practice to implement man-to-man formational adjustments. You don't have to work empty adjustments, trips adjustments. Nowadays with the offenses running a lot of mesh, you get a lot of squeezed or tight condensed formations. You don't have to worry about, practicing a whole lot of comboing or banjoing with your remaining cover guys. We also feel like we can dictate the game and concern ourselves more with what we're doing versus having, like I said, a ton of checks in what they're doing. And we also use matchup principles in our fire zones. Eventually, our guys will get their eyes back to the quarterback, and then we got 6 guys who can rally to the ball once it's thrown underneath, and those things like that. Again, why you want to run the cover zone. Again, we're going to force the quarterback to throw hot, and then we got, again, our 6 guys that are ready to rally to the quarterback. We also feel like it gives us a great advantage in our pre-snap disguising and movement, and the quarterback not necessarily knowing who's going to be where or where the hot route is going to be. Okay, so that's kind of the why behind a fire zone. I want to take also a second to answer the question, when. I think it's important to know, as a defensive coordinator or coach, when is the ideal time to run a fire zone, because it can't be, your only answer to a 5-man pressure. So you want to identify the certain down and distances when a fire zone is most beneficial for you. Along with that, when it's tied to certain personnel groupings, 10 personnel versus 11 personnel. And then also with the down and distance and personnel, understanding, having a plan as to attacking their protection. Do you want to bring your pressure to or away from the running back based on 10 personnel, people they're keeping in protection? Again, in 11 personnel, are they using their tight end in protection or are they putting them out? So do you want to bring your pressure to the tight end or away from the tight end, or we also call the 3-man surface side? Or ultimately, do you feel like the pressure is better to the field or to the boundary based on, again, down and distance and personnel groupings and where you can benefit the most? I think, when you put your plan of attack in for blitzing and you're bringing 5, are you getting a 5-on-5 and you want to put your best against their worst in terms of matchup? Are you getting a 5-on-6? And now how can you attack their protection to get potentially a 2-on-1 on the running back and things like that? So those are important things to consider when you want to bring your fire zone pressure and play your 3 under 3 deep behind it. Also understanding, again, cover 3, it's got the same voids and vulnerabilities that a normal cover 3 has. But now with a 5-man pressure, those immediate flat areas are also going to be a void or vulnerability. Okay? So I want to take a quick second just to kind of recap for everyone, the underneath zones in any coverage. We got 2 flat areas, basically a couple yards above the top of the numbers to the sideline. We got our hooks, which work from above the numbers to almost the hash. And then we got our hook zone, which, whether you're a college coach or a high school coach, the hash alignments are different, but essentially that hook guy is going to work from inside the hash to inside the hash. So those are 5 underneath zones. Now in a traditional cover 3, when you're bringing 4, so I just drew up a traditional 4 down here. We've got 4 guys to play the 5 underneath zones, and then we got a remaining 3 players playing their 3 deep. So in a traditional cover 3, your 2 outside guys are going to play their curl to the flat, and your 2 inside linebackers are going to play their hook to the curl. So we got 4 guys responsible for 5 underneath zones. If we go here to a fire zone, so now we're bringing a 5-man pressure. I just drew up a pressure. And now we have 3 defenders responsible for 5 underneath zones. So now you can see where the voids could potentially occur. So our middle player here still has essentially what we call the hook. So now here the key is your 2 outside guys. What we do is we have them play what we call a seam curl flat, or sometimes the acronym SCIF is used, which I'll go into more detail here in a minute. But you can see again in a cover 3, you're going to have some voids out here in the immediate flat area, which again, when you dial up your fire zone, you have to be okay with them throwing immediately to the flat in your down and distance, and then you rally and tackle the ball. Okay, so I'm gonna go into more detail here about our seam curl flat players. So I think it's important to understand here at the bottom. I put for our SCIF player, our seam curl flat, their primary assignment is they are going to play inside leverage of number 2, and we tell them to collision that number 2 inside out. Essentially, we tell them to hang and bang that guy in the seam, and then we'll expand late to the curl, and ultimately, we're going to let the quarterback's front shoulder or the ball take us to the flat. Okay? So that's kind of our basic rule for our seam curl flat player. Inside hip, inside leverage of number 2, hang and bang him in the seam, and expand late to the curl and let the quarterback and the ball take you to the flat. So the first scenario here on the left-hand side, here's our seam curl flat player. He's playing inside hip at number 2. And if he gets a vertical route by number 2, he is going to carry that seam until the corner on his side of the field gives him a call, communicates with him that he now sees number 2 vertical, and his number 1 has sat it down either on an out route or a curl or some sort of intermediate hitch. And he's going to carry that seam until he gets that call, and then he will release number 2 to the corner and drive on that number 1. Okay, so we got a call for that guy. But otherwise, if the corner never communicates with him to release number 2, our seam curl flat player will carry number 2 on a seam underneath and carry it and make the quarterback elevate that seam throw for the corner and our middle third safety to be able to come and make a play on it and disrupt the pass. I kind of relate it to when you have a cover 2 corner and he gets beat outside, what do you tell that cover 2 corner to do? You tell him to turn and run with number 1 and basically vacate the flat. Essentially, we're doing the same thing here with our seam curl flat player. If one sits it down, our seam curl flat player will carry number 2, and essentially we will drive on anything there in the flat late. Okay. Second scenario, if number 2 runs a hot route in, our seam curl flat player is taking that hot route and he's going to wall or reroute 2. He's going to make number 2 go shallow underneath him, or he's going to make number 2 work vertical over the top and get more depth to our hook player. Okay. We're not going to vacate that curl and work to 1. We're going to stay and hang and bang number 2. Okay. We're going to wall reroute 2. And again, we'll expand late to the curl and then ultimately to the flat. So there's a second scenario. Number 2 works in on a hot or under route. Scenario 3 here is number 2 runs an immediate out. We are not going to drive the immediate out. We're going to work to the top of the route and get our eyes to 1, looking for that curl, that dig, that slant coming in. And we're going to stay on that curl until the ball is thrown to the flat. So it's important that we stay in this curl even when number 2 runs an immediate out. We're not going to drive on it. Okay, scenario 4 here, our seam curl flat player is over number 2 and he stays in and blocks. Okay, and we're not going to jump it. We're not going to drive it. We're going to keep depth over number 2 and be alert to number 1 coming in, or ultimately number 3 going out, and then we'll drive on it late. In this case, with 3 working that way, our hook player is zoning off of 3, so he can now work to the inside hip of 2 and kind of give our seam curl flat player a push call at some point, and then that lets him know that he can kind of work and get more width on number 3 going in the flat. All right. So there's our basic 4 scenarios for our seam curl flat player. I did want to take a second to talk about our kill zones when we bring a 5-man pressure. We talk about generally our quarterback has an upfield shoulder, a near number, and then right up the middle, a bullseye. So if we're bringing a 5-man pressure from our right, our nose guard knows he's going to work away from the pressure, and he has the near number of the quarterback. Our defensive end opposite the blitz is going to be our contain or upfield shoulder blitzer, or not blitzer, our rusher. Our defensive end, in this case, long sticking, he now knows he has 2 guys coming outside of him, so he can run the bullseye path and go directly to the quarterback. And then depending on the path of our two outside blitzers here, one of them is going to be responsible for the near number of the quarterback, and one of them is going to be our container upfield shoulder blitzer. I thought it was important that I share this with y'all because on a few of these 5-man pressures, our D-line or our blitzing linebackers lost their kill zone, and the quarterback did escape the pressure and was able to scramble and get some yards on us. So I want to kind of go over our 5-man pressure kill zones. All right, so I'm going to start here with a basic 2-by-2 formation with the ball in the middle of the field. Kind of start from the foundation of this fire zone. So what I got drawn up here, again, I'm not doing a whole lot of exotic 5-man pressures, just drawing, kind of America's blitz off the edge here. And up on our boundary safety, playing inside hip and number 2. He's our boundary SCIF player, okay? His basic alignment is 10 to 12 yards. He's got a 4-yard rule. He's going to be 4 yards within the hash, and he is our SCIF player in the boundary. He's going to be inside hip at 2, hanging and banging him, and then he's going to play 2 to 1. Okay? To the field here, our nickel, he's going to be at 6 yards, apexing number 2 and the end man on the line of scrimmage, and he's going to execute what we call a statue technique. Essentially, if he gets any run action, he is going to hold and freeze and what we call statue until he determines whether the ball has been handed off or the ball has been pulled and it's an RPO or play action pass. Okay, and I'll give you some good clips of this here in a minute. Once he identifies that the ball has been pulled and it's a pass, or he reads pass right away, he is going to work that seam curl flat to the field. He's going to work inside hip and number 2. He's going to hang and bang him, and then he's going to rules that we talked about a minute ago. Okay, and then we're playing cover 3 behind it. Essentially, basic cover 3. Our corner is going to play inside number 1 at midpoint 1 and 2, eyes from 1 to 2, and our our field safe is going to execute a middle third assignment. He's first responsible for the number 2s up the field, and then ultimately, if they eliminate themselves, he can get his eyes to 1 and look for a post. Okay. So same 2-by-2 formation, but now the ball is on a hash, which is essentially all the scenarios we had of all the film I got you. So I drew this up here. We got a 2-by-2 formation, but ball on a hash. So the splits of 1 and 2 in the boundary got less space here. So our boundary safety might deviate a little bit, but he's still inside hip at 2 player. Our nickel is still apexed. He's going to statue at 6 yards and be an inside hip at 2, seam curl flat player to the field. And now everyone else is still playing cover 3. Okay, so I got a few clips I want to show you guys. Executing the statue technique by number 2. I got a couple with the correct statue, and I got one example where we did not statue, and I can show you how it hurt us. Okay, so our first clip here, it's lagging a little bit, but I'll get here. So you can see, I'll pause it right here. We got our 3-4 defense. We got a disguise going on. You can see our safeties here doing a great job holding our 2-high look. At this point, you really couldn't tell who's coming or what coverage we're in. Okay, I want you to watch our boundary safety here. In the boundary, the 1 and 2 kind of run an exchange release. He doesn't chase number 2 out. He stays inside hip of his new number 2, which was the number 1 receiver, becomes his new number 2 and stays inside of him. Okay? Doesn't chase, sits. Oops, sorry, I didn't pause there. I wanted you to. You can see our boundary corner here does a good job of midpointing and taking the vertical of his new number 1 or number 2. And then so you can see to the field here, our nickel does a great job of staying inside hip of number 2. He's hanging and banging him and widening his release and forcing him out. Now here in a second, he could have probably done a better job of holding that curl, because ultimately at this point, we want the quarterback to throw this long, deep out or curl. This was a 2nd and 7. We dialed up a fire zone. We got our 5-man pressure here. It's going to come home. It's going to get home here in a second. But again, you can see our 3 underneath players holding on the inside hip of 2. And you can see our middle linebacker here zoning off a 3. The running back stayed in protection. And now he just gets his eyes and finds some in the middle of the field. Okay, and then there's the execution, forced a bad throw at the end. From the end zone. Sorry about that. Let me get a little fast forward it. Okay, we got a little sugar on it. Okay, our mic does a good job of showing. Pull it back here. He ends up being our hook player, but he's going to show here. We bring our boundary blitz. Pressure gets home, and we throw an errant ball in the ground. All right, next game here. We're in the national championship. 2x2 balls on a hash. Again, we have our two seam curl flat players. Our safeties do a pretty good job here to holding their disguise. Our corners play deep third. Our field safety has middle third. Here is our field nickel. Okay, again, he's statuing, reading, pass, run. Once he gets that pass read, he's going to work inside hip of number 2, hang and bang, wall number 2, push him out here to the corner. Our boundary safety does a good job here. He does end up outside leverage in number 2, but he's okay because he carries that seam, and he's got help in the middle of the field here. You can take a look. Okay, at this point, our corner is in somewhat of a precarious situation. His hips are really too committed to number 1, and this seam route could potentially be dangerous for us. So he really needs to do a better job of releasing that number 1. You can see our nickel's got his eyes on him, and he's going to get out to it. And at this point, our corner really should be midpoint and squeezed into number 2. Okay, I'll run that back so you can kind of see it again. Again, here's our two seam curl flat players, our boundary safety and our field outside linebacker. We did end up bringing our boundary outside and our field inside, and our Mike ended up being our hook player here. He zoned off a 3. Running back stayed in the protection. So now he's just going to play low hole hook and find work. Okay, we make the quarterback pull it down. He scrambles, checks it down late. They did get that's the throw we want. We want that throw wide and outside to the sideline. Okay, next clip here is when our nickel, our field outside linebacker, does not execute the statue technique. I apologize. Boundary safety rolled down early, and you can tell we're in a 1 high already. So they have a run play called here, but the quarterback already sees us rotating to the boundary, so he decides to pull it and throw to the field, which we would be okay with, but you'll see here in a second, our nickel does not execute a statue. He ends up biting on the run action, takes a few shuffles in, and now they got a 2-on-1 on the perimeter. Yeah, so this is an example where our nickel did not execute a statue. He bit on the run. He gave ground when he should have been holding right here, and now they got kind of a 2-on-1 on the perimeter for us. Really, at this point, our nickel probably should be inside hip right here. You'll see here in a second. Another problem, our corner gets pinned, goes inside the block. So you can see, things don't always get executed perfectly. But what I really wanted you all to see again was our nickel not executing the statue technique, and it gets us out leveraged here to the field in trouble. Also, again, pre-snap, we didn't hold our 2 high. Quarterback does a great decision. They got guys on scholarship as well. He sees predetermined that we're rolling to the boundary. He throws to the field. We don't execute very well, and they end up getting a first down. So there's some bad clips in here as well. Oh, sorry about that. So again, another reason that we feel like a fire zone is a good changeup to a 5-man. If we're in any type of man coverage right now, we're going to be having a lot of banjoing and combo calls going on. 5 eligible receivers, and our 5 guys will be playing man. So again, a little bit more simple to execute here is a fire zone. We've got basically a bear front here. We walked up into a 5-man front. We're going to bring all 5 guys. We also got a little game going on here, and we actually lose our upfield contain rusher by our defensive end. But here's our 3 underneath players, our field nickel, and then we actually called for our safeties to roll down and show a cover 3 here, show a cover 1 with our boundary safety, and then there's our Mike. So there's our 3 under and 3 deep players. Again, you'll see the rush. We do lose our upfield shoulder and contain rush, and they do scramble on it. But again, a good look of our fire zone 3 under 3 deep. Okay. All right, I put this clip in here. It's probably the last one we'll do of 2x2. We're going to bring a 5-man pressure, 3 under 3 deep. So here's our 3 under. You can see our nickel here to the field doing a great job, staying inside hip and number 2, hanging and banging him, carrying him for our middle third safety. You can see our Mike here in the hook, and you can see our boundary safety here playing seam curl flat. It really has no seam, so he's going to sit in the curl. He would go to the flat if they did throw this to the flat. This is 3rd and 19. Okay, 3rd and 19. 5-man pressure. We end up with a free hitter on the quarterback here. Our boundary outside linebacker, we beat their protection. We got a free hitter on the quarterback. So what's he got to do? He's got to check it down here. I apologize. I wanted this to stop. So at this point, he has caught the ball for a 4-yard gain, and he's got to get 15 yards for a first down. We've got 6 eyes on this guy with the ball in his hands with 15 yards to go. Now, I do want you to see here. Here's everyone rallying to the ball. He's caught the ball. He has 15 yards to go. Now, again, it's important. Our nickel here doesn't keep the ball eye and eye inside and in front. He over pursues, doesn't know where his help is, and the receiver cuts back. But even with all that bad that took place, we did stop him short and force a punt and a 4th down. Okay. I did want to show this last one right here. 2 by 2. Let me go back to the top. I apologize. So we're going to bring a boundary 5-man pressure. We've got our 3 under, 3 deep. They did keep a 7-man protection. So they got 3 out. They kept the tight end in. So safety, his number 2 stayed in. He's just going to sit in the curl. Here's our middle hook player. And then here's our nickel again doing a great job staying inside hip of number 2, hanging and banging, walling him, and then sitting in the curl. Now here's our 5-man pressure. Upfield shoulder, near number. Our nose guard is our bullseye guy. He ends up getting washed past his bullseye, and the quarterback pulls it down and scrambles on us. So again, there's the nose. He gets pushed past his bullseye. He should be on this edge of that guard. Okay, they scramble. It was a 2nd and 10. They scrambled for about 7 yards. We did force a 3rd down. Okay, I can get the end zone again here real quick for our pass rush stuff. Here's our 5-man pressure. You can see right here, at this point, they slid to the field. They got the back and the tight end to the boundary. We get some good one-on-ones. We get up in the quarterback's face, and then we force a scramble. Oops, I apologize. Let me go back to that. So now we're going to talk about same pressure. Okay, we're bringing that boundary fire zone versus a 3-by-1 formation. So again, we don't have to have any type of man coverage check. One thing that changes is our drops a little bit. So in our 3-4 now, our Sam, who was lined up here essentially like in the 30, he now has to apex the end man on the line of scrimmage and the number 3 receiver. And he's going to execute that same statue technique that we talked about the nickel executing. Our nickel now is going to apex 3 and 2, and he's working the same rules. Inside hip at number 2, he's a seam curl flat to player. He's going to hang and bang 2 and play curl to flat. Our boundary safety, same rules, seam curl flat. He has no immediate seam with his number 2 in the backfield. So essentially, he's going to sit in this curl unless the ball takes him to the flat. Also, if they do one with the back strong and we get 4-by-1, essentially, we give him somewhat of a slingshot rule, and he's actually going to get pulled more to the field. Okay. We'll see a few clips here in 3-by-1. Our boundary safety ends up actually pedaling out when he should be coming down in his curl, and we lose him in a run fit, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Boundary corner here has a solo third. He could press bail this, based on ability or call. And then our field corner here is going to execute the same cover 3. He's going to be midpoint in 1 to 2. He's going to midpoint 2 and 3. Everything else is the same. Okay, so we'll get to some 3-by-1 with the boundary fire zone pressure. Okay, you can see we're going to bring these 2 from the boundary. I apologize, it didn't freeze when I want. Our boundary safety here should identify it's a 4-by-1. They got trips and the back to the field. Okay, and he does actually in this one identify it. He's sees quick game, and he knows that he can just rob one right now. To the field here, our Sam is still inside hip of 3. Our nickel is apexing 2 and 3 and statuing. I'll give you an end zone shot of here this in a minute. You can see it even better. So again, here's our Sam and our nickel execute an inside hip of 2 and 3. They do a great job of 2 becoming the new 3. And so now our nickel is going to get hands on his new 2, and our hook player is going to work off the new 3. You can see our 3D players, our 2 corners, and our field safety. And you'll see our boundary safety here. He knows he can cut it loose a little bit with the 4x1 formation, and he's actually going to try to jump this, and a good throw, he might have picked it. Yeah, I'll run that back for you again from the top. You can see our boundary safety cut it loose a little bit. He has a little more freedom, and he jumps one and makes a play on it. That also was their guy. 84 was really their player. I wanted to get to this view right here. You can see 3x1. Here's our nickel. He is apexed on the number 2 and number 3. He is statuing. Here's our Sam. He's inside hip of 3. He's also playing linebacker statue technique from here. Here's our boundary safety. He knows it's 4x1. He can cut it loose a little bit, and he ends up jumping that outside. Here's our 5-man pressure if you want to see it. There's our kill zones, upfield shoulder, near number. Our long stick here would have the bullseye, and then we have near number and upfield shoulder. Again, they go quick game, boundary out, cut it loose a little bit. All right, next clip. 3x1 out of pistol. So they really haven't designated whether it's a 4x1 or if the back's to the field or to the boundary. You're going to see our Sam here execute the statue technique. He gets run action. He holds and freezes until he sees the ball handed off or pulled. In this case, the ball was handed off, and once he sees it was handed off, he actually ends up triggering and making the tackle for a 7-yard gain. This really should have been our boundary safety's tackle at probably 2 to 3 yards. He could have cut it loose, dropped down, and made a tackle here for a couple-yard gain. Okay, but watch our Sam here execute the statue technique. Everyone else is the same as we mentioned earlier. Field corner here is going to midpoint 1 to 2, deep third. Our field safety has middle third. Our boundary safety here is playing a press bail cover 3. I will show you the end zone here in a minute as well. And we did not execute the blitz very well. And we had 3 guys in one gap, which apologize, which also didn't help our run fits. Okay, but I'll let you guys want to see the statue technique here by our Sam. Once he sees it handed, he triggered, and he makes this for a 7-yard gain. I'm going to run it back so you can watch our boundary safety. He really could have triggered on this instead of pedaling out and made it probably for a 2 or 3-yard gain. Okay, he shouldn't be giving ground right now. He needs to trigger and come make that tackle. You want to see it from the end zone. Again, watch our Sam execute the statue technique. Our boundary safety out of the screen a little bit really should be making this tackle right here. We do end up with 3 guys in one gap, which you'll see here in a minute as well, which is never good for a run fit. Our boundary defensive end on his long stick ends up pushed out of his gap, and then both outside blitzers, he could have came a little tighter. Again, for our run fit, though, our defensive end should have been in this gap. Our boundary safety should have been coming down. You'll see our Sam here again, who statued it. He saw it handed off, and then he ended up triggering, folding in, and making the tackle for us for a 7-yard gain. Not ideal, didn't execute it well, but again, it was fairly safe in the run game as well. I'm going to skip this one for now. It's basically the same thing. I want to get to this one right here. So we're going to run. Oops. Sorry about that. We're going to run a boundary 5-man pressure. You can see our 5 guys coming, our Will, our 3D lineman, and our Mike. Now, this blitz in particular, I'll show the end zone here in a minute, but our safety was responsible for this boundary A gap. So we could have played it a little more aggressively. You'll see our Sam here, once again, execute a statue technique, and he ends up triggering and making the tackle over here for a 10-yard gain, which is too much because we don't execute on the boundary safety. But again, here's our fire zone. Field safety, inside hip of 2. Our field inside linebacker now apexes. He's inside hip of 3. He's statuing. Middle third player, deep third, boundary corner, deep third. You can see here, our boundary safety should have triggered to the boundary A gap and made this tackle a lot sooner than he did, and our Sam gets in on it. I'll let you watch it for end zone. I already kind of just talked you through it. You can see that A gap is our boundary safety has that A gap in this fire zone versus this 3-by-1 formation. So that really is his tackle to make for a much, much shorter gain. All right, last one. They start out 3-by-1, a bunch cluster. Again, if we had some sort of man call on here, even before this motion, I apologize. We probably would have had some sort of banjo going on here with our corner, our field safety, and our field outside linebacker. They even motion to empty 4-by-1. So again, if we had some sort of man, cover 1 or 0 on, again, we're having to spend time talking about empty, empty 3-by-2, 2-by-3, or in this case, 4-by-1 man check. Now we're in a fire zone. We can still bring our 5 and play our basic fire zone behind it. Also, our boundary safety knows now he can slingshot to the field and play inside of our hook player. And then there's our field seam curl flat player. 4th and 4. There's our 3 underneath players, our 3 deep, our 5-man pressure. They go quick game on 4th and 4. Sorry, this is 1st and 10. I apologize. We force the quick throw, and they don't even execute it. But we're fairly safe against the run and the pass when they went 4-by-1. All right, this is essentially the same thing. I drew it up as if, ball's in the middle, we're bringing our field pressure, but same thing, our field safety now is executing the seam curl flat on number 2 to the field, and our will is now executing the seam curl flat in the boundary on number 2. Everything else is the same as I talked about earlier in a 2-by-2 formation. Now we're just rolling or spinning to the field and executing the same fire zone. I'm going to buzz through these because it's the same thing I talked about earlier. I do want to get to a few more scenarios. All right. So here you can see we're bringing a field pressure. We want to, maybe for one reason or another, in 10 personnel, you want to bring pressure from the field, but also we don't want to have to check out of it or swap the blitz to someone else if we're playing man coverage here. This wouldn't be very good if we wanted to go cover 1 or 0 versus 3-by-1 and bring in pressure from the trip side to the field. So now we can run our fire zone. Our field safety, inside hip of 2, is going to hang and bang, wall him. Our Mike now, we are gapped out to the field here. So he can actually probably cheat his alignment a little bit and get inside hip of number 3 playing his hook. Our boundary linebacker now has seam curl flat. Really has no immediate seam threat with number 2 in the backfield. So he's going to play that curl. Our boundary safety is going to work to the middle third, playing 3-2. Everything else is the same as I talked about earlier with our field corner and our boundary corner here. But again, versus 3-by-1, if you want to be able to bring pressure to the trip side and not have to swap the blitz or not have to worry about your Mike playing man-to-man on number 3, we can now play the fire zone behind it. So here's a clip of our 3-by-1. This is actually also out of a 3 safety look. So essentially right now we have 3 defensive linemen on the field. We have an outside linebacker playing Mike. We have 2 nickels in the game playing outside linebacker. We got our 2 corners in, and we got a 3 safety look here. We got a boundary safety. We have a field safety, and we also have another position that we call, and he's a middle of the field safety. But we're going to be bringing a field pressure here. We're bringing our middle linebacker and our field outside linebacker and playing a fire zone behind it. Now, this guy ended up actually coming and turning it into a 6-man pressure when it wasn't supposed to be. You'll see here in a second. So do bring 6 when we're supposed to bring 5. But you can see here's our field safety playing inside hip of number 2. Number 2 goes out. He's going to stay in the curl, look for a new number 2. Our middle safety now comes down and plays inside hip of 3, and our boundary safety still has the same rule. He plays middle third, and we got our corners playing deep third. We end up bringing 6 when we should have brought 5, like I said. And we end up actually in a 2 under, 3 deep coverage, which we also do have in our playbook, which is a whole nother long talk in itself, which we'll save for later. But you can see here, everyone executes their fire zone correctly, and we force an errant throw here. And again, this was called on 1st and 10. This was late in the game. They had to get down the field. You can see we get pressure on the quarterback, force a bad throw, and execute our fire zone, even with 1 less person underneath than we had expected. We did get a scenario where we had a field fire zone called, and we got a formation into the boundary, a 3-by-1 into the boundary here. So I want to kind of draw this up real quick in case you get it. Our will now has to split or apex 2 and 3 and play seam curl flat on 2. Our Mike now has to leave the box, apex the tackle and number 3, and play inside hip of 3. Now with less space here to the field, he would rock back, and his hook would end up kind of being right here in this area. Our field safety can now come down real tight, and he really had no immediate number 2, so he can also look to cut 1 or look for 3 coming across a new number 2 from the boundary. Could get, like I said, a field pressure with a boundary formation. So here I got it drawn up and give you an example here. They end up, again, this is late in the game. They end up throwing a boundary quick game hitch. Here's our Will and our Mike playing inside hip of 2 and 3. They're now going to rally to that boundary hitch. Our corner drives it. Here's our field safety playing his seam curl flat. Really is no immediate seam, so he can be more aggressive and cut it loose on something else. Again, if you get boundary hitch or quick game against the fire zone, that is somewhat of the void. We all just now got to rally and tackle. We would have preferred to keep this guy in bounds here, but it was end of the game. All right. Kind of another option for you in your fire zone is bringing your 2 inside linebackers. I got kind of a cross dog drawn up here, and now using your safety, one of your safeties to replace the hook. So in this case, we have our field safety. He's going to take over the hook for our 2 inside linebackers. As he comes down, he is responsible for this B gap, and then he's going to play the hook. Our 2 outside linebackers, our nickel and our Will, are going to do the same seam curl flat rules they had in the other fire zones. Inside hip of 2, they're going to wall, hang and bang number 2 and play that seam curl, let the ball take them to the flat. Our corners play that same 2-by-2 cover 3 rules. They're going to be inside number 1. They're going to play 1 to 2, mid-pointing 1 to 2. And in this case, our boundary safety is going to work to the middle third, and he's going to be mid-pointing the 2s. And if they eliminate themselves either out or under, he can get his eyes to 1. So another alternative for a fire zone is bringing your 2 inside linebackers and letting one of your safeties replace them in the middle of the field. In this case, we called for our field safety to replace them and our boundary safety to play the middle third. I got a couple clips of this. First case here, 2-by-2, the ball is on a hash. But same thing, we got a 5-man pressure. Apologize, I wanted it to stop right there. We got our 5-man pressure. We got our bringing our 2 inside linebackers. Here's our boundary outside linebacker playing inside hip of 2. Here's our field outside linebacker playing inside hip of 2. They're both playing their seam curl flat rules. Our boundary safety has the middle third. Our field safety is going to replace them or rob them and play the hook. Both corners playing same cover 3 concept. Again, we get quick game. We get a boundary hitch. Again, that is going to be, somewhat of a void or vulnerability in any cover 3, essentially. So we'll drive on it, tackle it. Again, this is the end of the game. We would prefer to keep it in bounds and keep the clock running. But again, here's a look at our field safety creeping and replacing our 2 inside linebackers blitzing in the hook. Here's an example of the same call versus a 3-by-1. We don't have to have a man. We don't have man coverage check. We can still execute our fire zone. Our free safety now goes inside hip of 3. Our nickel still plays as inside hip of 2 rules. Our boundary corner, I apologize, I drew him up. He's misaligned. He should be inside 1. He's going to play a solo third. He's still going to check his number 2. Our boundary outside linebacker now bumps into the box, and he got the same seam curl flat rules. His seam player is in the backfield. He's going to play more of a curl and then go to the flat once the ball's thrown. Our field corner, same thing versus 3x1, inside 1. He's going to midpoint 1 and 2. Again, that corner's misaligned. Our boundary safety is probably going to work a little more to the hash pre-snap and then get to his middle third. He's going to have to end up midpointing 3 and 2 possibly. Everything else is the same. We're going to execute the blitz here from a apex to alignment. Go to the clip for you. So this is in the national championship here. Now this was a 11 personnel 3x1. So our Sam is inside of his number 3 and he can stay in the box. You can see pre-snap, both safeties are holding their 2 show. Corners are off at 7 and inside. Our nickel is apexed, the number 2 and 3. And you really can't tell what coverage we're in right now. You don't know who's coming. You can't tell. It's a great pre-snap disguise. Okay? Our nickel here, our Will, our boundary outside linebacker, does recognize, understands the formation. This is a 3rd and 10. He knows the down and distance. 2's in the backfield. He probably had a good idea that 2 was staying in the protection, and he knew that he could cut it loose and drop underneath 1 here. Okay, take a look. Oops, sorry about that. Let me go back to that. At this point, 3rd and 10, quarterback wants this deep first down curl comeback. He wants this right here for a first down. You can see our nickel inside hip of number 2 carrying the seam so far. Our field safety is working off a 3, carrying that seam. Could be maybe a little more inside, but he's in good shape. Our field corner is midpointing 1 and 2. He, at this point, is still responsible for 2 vertical. 2 is starting to sit it down. He can now kind of work more to number 1. Here's our boundary safety playing his middle third. Again, at this point, the quarterback wants this outside stick comeback on 3rd and 10. Our boundary outside linebacker does a great job getting underneath it. So what's the quarterback got to do? He's got to pull it down or come down to his next option. We've got the next 2 covered. Inside 2, inside 3. He's still underneath 1. Option at this point might be to pull it down and throw this long comeback. Doesn't do that. That's really not an option for him. Pulls it down, the blitz gets home, and we get a sack on 3rd and 10. Again, wanted to highlight this. Love to see this. Sideline, upset, not happy. Gotta love it as a defensive coach, right? Gotta love it as a defensive coach. 3rd and 10, we execute the fire zone just really nicely. The blitz gets home, and we get off the field. All right, another example here. This is a 10 personnel 3x1. This is a great job of our safeties holding it too high, rotating again. This is called on a 2nd and 17. Okay, we had a plan for 2nd and long. This is one of our plans, a fire zone. We got 10 personnel 3x1. We're bringing, again, a 5-man pressure, playing a fire zone behind it. Our field safety is going to work inside of 3. Our field outside linebacker inside of 2. You can see the pressure comes. The quarterback throws hot. Here's our underneath players. There's our deep third players. And again, our free safety is working inside hip of 3. And then once the ball's thrown hot, he's going to come up, him and the nickel, and our linebacker make the tackle. And now it's 3rd and 9. So 2nd and 17, we don't mind them getting a quick hot throw and it being 3rd and 9. Again, also having a sense of where we're at in the game right now. You can see that was an RPO. That was a bad camera job right there. Okay, one last one here. Again, 10 personnel, 3x1. We're going to bring a 5-man pressure. Again, at this point, our field safety is going to work inside of 3. Our nickel's inside of 2. Here's our Will playing off of 3. And we got our deep third players. Force a quick game, a quick screen. This was on a 2nd and 7, quick throw, and now it's 3rd down. I'm going to buzz through this real quick. Okay, our last option out of this same blitz versus 3-by-1 is sometimes we're going to ask our boundary safety to slingshot and play inside hip of 3 in the hook. And our field nickel is still doing the same thing. Apex in 3 and 2, seam curl flat. Our boundary outside linebacker now slides into the box. He's got seam curl flat working off a 2-to-1 in the boundary. And then our field corner, same thing, cover 3 rules. He's in a midpoint 1 and 2. Our boundary corner is misaligned again. I apologize. He should be inside of 1, playing a solo third, or working off of the running back in the backfield. Okay? So this clip is against Valdosta. This was week 9, the first time we played him. This was the game we actually lost, ultimately. Okay, I'll pause it right here. I'll let it pause. Here's going to be our 3 underneath players. There's our nickel, our Sam, and our boundary safety. Okay, our 3 underneath guys and our 3 deep. I actually wanted to back up right here. We got a 3-man pressure here, and this is where you can get creative. We actually have a double spy on the quarterback. Those of you familiar with Valdosta, their quarterback was a dude. We did not want him to beat us on 3rd and long scrambling, so we are spying with both linebackers here. So it's not technically a 5-man pressure; it's a 3-man pressure. We're going to let their 5 offensive linemen occupy our 3 defensive linemen, and then we got 2 guys spying their best, if not one of their best players, on a 3rd and 13. Okay. Again, here's our 3 underneath players: our field outside linebacker, our inside linebacker playing inside of 3, and our bound slingshot and work towards number 3 here in a minute. There are 3 deep. You can see at this point right now, the quarterback wants this chains, first down, curl, hitch, dig. Our nickel does a great job staying in that curl window. He doesn't get width. He doesn't take any bait to the flat. Quarterback has to check it down to the flat on 3rd and 13, and now our nickel and everyone else can rally to the ball, make a tackle for a 3-yard gain, and now it's 4th and 10. We love it. Get off the field, give our offense a chance to go down and win the game for us. Actually, I'll show this end zone clip for you. You can kind of see, I apologize. You can see our 2 linebackers executing a spy on the quarterback. Okay, we did not want him to beat us scrambling. 3rd and 13, check it down to the flat. Now it's 4th and 10. Defense is excited. Special teams come out there. Offense has a chance to win the game for us. Okay, last one I had here, and I will pull up a clip for you in a second. It's going to take me a minute. But you can also run a trap concept behind a field pressure versus 2-by-2 or 3-by-1 if you don't want to roll your safety down and have your corner play deep third. So we're bringing a field pressure. I drew it up versus 3-by-1. I have a clip of it versus 2-by-2. And then your corner is going to trap 2. The only difference is now he can't play inside hip of 2, obviously coming from the outside. But he's going to play your seam curl flat on number 2 from the outside leverage. Your field safety now has to work immediately over the top of 1, but still being in the midpoint 1 to 2. Your boundary safety has the same rules here. Everyone else is the same. Okay? So I'm going to pull that up for you. Exit full screen. I'm on a clip here of Manny Diaz running it. So this is I found this clip. This is from Manny Diaz. This is a spring game versus Texas. They're going to cover 2 traps. So this is also a simulated pressure. They're going to drop their boundary defensive end into the boundary seam curl flat. They're going to bring 2 guys off the field, and they're going to trap this corner on number 2. So they do it versus 2-by-2 here. I'll pause it here in a sec for you. Let's get to it. Yes, they got a little disguise going on. They're going to bring 2 guys off the field. They got 3 D linemen coming. They're dropping the boundary, and they're going to trap this field corner. He's going to play seam curl flat on number 2. Everyone else is playing regular cover 3. You can run it versus 2-by-2 or 3-by-1. This is versus 2-by-2. trap technique, trap concept I wanted to kind of show y'all. Another option. Let me move this. I don't know if that's in the way. Let me play it one more time for you. Okay, you're going to see the field corner here, trap number 2, and they still got 3 guys over the top. You see him dropping boundary, seam curl flat. Quarterback has to force a quick throw and out of bounds. Okay. So that is essentially our basic fire zone stuff. I wanted to, in case you're still tuned in, I appreciate it. Want to go back to the top here for you. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. There's my email address. There's my Twitter. Feel free to message me. Would love to connect and share with y'all. I can go over into more detail if you want on more exotic 5-man pressures. I can talk more about some of the fire zone stuff. But like I said, would love to connect with anybody out there that has any more questions or wants to share any way that they run their fire zones. We did have also other ways that we bring five guys and play zone behind it. So if you want to get some more information about other ways to play zone behind a 5-man, please feel free to reach out. I just wanted to go over the fire zone concept today, the 3 under 3 deep. So thank you for tuning in. If you're still tuned in, I appreciate it. And God bless everybody out there.